Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm 𝐃𝐨𝐬.
And this is our 94th episode. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope that everybody had an outstanding Halloween, the best of all the holidays, in my opinion. But actually, we didn't do anything on Halloween Day, which was yesterday, but we did, or I should say, a ton of Halloween stuff in the last week or two.
Well, you and I did go to Spooky World together, which is a local haunt that's sort of a tradition for us. We try to go every year, and that was fun. But yeah, no, Halloween, I did a call with the team.
I mean, hey, that's fun. Our team is awesome.
And a lot of them were dressed up, and some of them were like live trick-or-treating on the call. The doorbell was ringing,
awesome.
And there were kids going trick-or-treat in the background. That was a lot of fun. It was a decent turnout, too. The day before Halloween was where we live. Haverhill was scheduled for trick-or-treating, but, you know, we don't live on the side of the highway, but we live on a street.
Pretty close. I wouldn't want my kids walking down our street. It's a people fly down this road, so we always get candy, but we don't get trick-or-treaters, which is sad.
And even the last place that we were at, you would think that there would have been a lot of trick-or-treaters.
There were a ton of trick-or-treaters at the last place we lived.
I felt like there could have been more.
Like a ton. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. I guess I want like all the kids to come trick-or-treating.
There were like hundreds of kids that came to the last house. I don't know what happened to your memory there, but I didn't actually get to take the kids trick-or-treating here, unfortunately, because I was at 𝐃𝐸𝐬's stupid competition instead of trick-or-treating all day. But my mom did. But I did get to take them to a vegan trunk-or-treat last week, which is cool because, you know, they are vegan. They've been vegan since they were born, with the exception of, like, man, adults just handing them things that aren't vegan because they either don't know or don't care. And I'm talking about, like, schools. It's a lot. It's a headache. But you know, at 3 and 5, they understand that they don't eat animals, but they don't really understand exactly what that means or what the difference is. And I get it. When you're 5, what's the difference between a hot dog and a vegan hot dog to you? Like, they look like the exact same thing. They probably taste pretty stinking close too. So anyway, getting to take them to an event where like all of the families were vegan and all of the kids were vegan, and you know, I didn't have to go through their candy and pull out stuff that was going to make them sick. It was awesome. It was just really, really awesome.
Real quick, best trunk decorated and what did it look like, and best candy given out?
Oh, there were some awesome trunks. I don't even know how to describe it. Some of them were just turned into giant fiery mouths. It was really cool. Wow. Best candy given out. Well, the most popular thing was somebody was actually handing out little rings that lit up. It wasn't candy, but they were rings that lit up, and the kids were going nuts for them. I handed out Biscoff cookies, and they went so fast that I felt like a giant jerk because I ran out of cookies, and I bought hundreds of them. So it was really, really cool. Anyway, yeah, and 𝐃𝐸𝐬 also had a competition last week.
I did, and it's a competition where they hand out lots of awards for the best posing routines, and so people bring it. They dress up in costumes. One person was, I don't know, was he like a pope or some sort of religious figure, a priest maybe, and other people wore masks and get-ups. So you know, it was fun. I wouldn't say it was like super Halloween-y like, but people definitely had fun with it. And yeah, honestly, I was a little sad that I wasn't able to be here for trick-or-treating, because even though we don't get trick-or-treaters, we can go out trick-or-treating with our family. But the competition was cool. It was fun. It was interesting, right? Because it was a smaller show, and yet there was more competition than larger shows that I've been at. And it always throws you for a loop, because you kind of try to like think about going into a show what you're going to be up against. And when you think, oh, it's a smaller show, you think, okay, well, maybe the competition won't be as fierce. But no, they brought it. There's something about this part of the country that just brings a lot of competition.
Yeah, I think it does, because I don't see, you know where else? I think it's the East Coast, because I see it down south on the East Coast too, and not super, super far south, but like the Carolinas and Virginia, like there's some stiff competition there too. But I don't see it everywhere. So I don't know, man, but it is intense here. There also could be a bias there because I see more shows here than anywhere else.
Well, the oldest natural bodybuilding organization has deep roots in this area of the country, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Maybe it does, but it was very cool. But yeah, it's important to know a small show does not necessarily mean it's going to be an easy show. So that's a thing to remember. Have you guys heard of the Vegan Cruise? If not, we want to tell you about it because we are so excited to be presenters on the 2023 cruise, and we would love to see you guys there. So the Vegan Cruise is exactly what it sounds like and so much more. It's a cruise from March 17th to March 24th that leaves from Miami and will be visiting Belize, Honduras, Costa Maya, and the Bahamas on the beautiful MSC Divinia. It is so cool to wake up in a new country every day of the trip, seriously. But as if that wasn't enough, one of the biggest drawbacks of most cruises is that there's nothing vegan to eat. I had a client actually go on a cruise recently, and she said she was shocked at how little she could eat, and for that price, it just was not worth it for her. But that's not a problem on this cruise because all 3 meals are fully catered, vegan, and made by gourmet chefs. You will never be hungry. There are also get-togethers like ice cream socials and pizza parties out by the pool. Very fun. And to top all of that off, the cruise is absolutely loaded with some of the biggest leaders in the vegan movement, giving lectures, presentations, and classes. Folks like Dr. Greger, Dr. Barnard, Dr. Clapper, Robert Cheek, Juliana Hever, and so many more, and of course, us. We will be hosting exercise classes and giving presentations on plant-based fitness. And of course, we would very much love to spend time with any of our listeners who come out. So if you're interested, click the link in the show notes to book your spot because it always sells out, and mention Vegan Proteins when you book and you'll get a $50 onboarding credit at the vegan bookstore. We look forward to vacationing with you guys. We are now in November. And Thanksgiving is coming up in just a few weeks, which is mind-blowing to me. We will have a really cool Black Friday thing. Keep your eyes open for that, guys. But today, what we are talking about has nothing to do with the holidays. It has to do with a question that we've gotten many times over the years about shift work and, people who work night shift, police officers, firefighters, nurses, people who work very strange hours, either consistently or inconsistently. How does that affect their fitness and physique goals, and what can they do about it? And it's actually a really challenging conversation, in my opinion. So as we get into that, what I want to talk about, and I think it's really important to talk about, are the effects that shift work, overnight shifts, can have on your overall health, because it's not good, guys. My first thing would be, if you can not work the night shift, I would recommend that. Based on all of the research, it's not good for you. Now, I'm not saying there are no reasons to want to work the night shift, because there are some upsides to working the night shift, but they have nothing to do with your health whatsoever. It's usually that they offer better pay for night shifts. You have, a shorter commute because there's less traffic in the middle of the night. There's less competition and also a higher turnover rate, so you are more likely to get promotions. Like, there are reasons that people do decide to work night shift. However, when it comes to your health, unfortunately, the research is really clear. It ain't good for you.
So shift work is one of those things where there's a lot of irony around it, because there is a great need for it. And those jobs are really cool. Like, think about it. You get to fight fires in the middle of the night. You get to police scenarios that need policing and need people. There's a need for people to get to safety, or to, they're for your service. Or at a hospital, for example, when someone's sick and they're maybe in the emergency room in the middle of the night, and they're coming to you for help. So, you're out there in the middle of the night and you're working, and it's your job to be vigilant and hyper alert throughout the night. And yet you're also interfering with your body's natural sleep rhythms. So whereas you would normally be able to take care of your body, right? Even just on a basic level. Let's talk about health first. Let's talk about health. When you sleep, your body gets rid of toxins, right? Your organs are functioning without worrying about digestion. You're sleeping and your organs are, your kidney, your liver, they're doing what they should be doing instead of digesting. You're sleeping, they're recovering, your body's mobilizing the stuff and getting rid of the stuff that shouldn't be there. Your injuries, you're focused, your body's repairing and recovering from your last workout or whatever crankiness you got going on in your system, including stress, right? And so now you're instead forcing yourself to stay awake. Now imagine what that must do to somebody, Danny.
Yeah, well, that's the basis. I believe that's where every single one of these problems stems from. With rare exception, it is the fact that you are fighting your body's natural circadian rhythm in order to do your job. And just like anything else, we talk about, oh, you can't trick your body, you can't trick your body. With shift work, that's exactly what's going on. There's a lot of things you can do, and we'll talk about that later in the podcast, things you can do to improve the situation, to get more used to working at night and sleeping during the day. But at the end of the day, your body knows that you're sleeping in the day and awake all night, and it is not into it.
And speaking from personal experience, honestly, I have been working in the middle of the night for about 4 months straight now. And I think it was last week I was looking at you, I was like, this is, like, I'm losing my sanity a little bit.
Well, for you, it's more of a chicken and egg scenario. It's not like someone said you had to work in the middle of the night, so your health started deteriorating. Your health, due to prep, has started deteriorating, and you're waking up in the middle of the night and just deciding to work. Right?
Yes, that is part of it. But the other part of it, if you remove that important piece of context, is just the fact that the sleeping pattern doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. Being up in the middle of the night and then taking a nap during the day, there's just something about it that feels off, put it that way. But anyways, yeah, so you increase your risk of disease when your body's not able to take care of itself and keep healthy.
Yeah. There's so many things, so many functions your body performs in its various stages of sleep. And when you mess with your sleep, which again, I think is the root of all the problems of shift work, there's a lot of problems that they see in studies for people who work overnights, whether they work one night a week or consistently overnight. There are a few things that pop up over and over again, like increased risk of breast cancer, increased risk of heart attacks. And in the heart attack study, they couldn't even really name with certainty the mechanism by which this seems to happen. They just saw that it happens. 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐞 hypothesized that it has to do with blood pressure regulation and things like that happen while you're asleep. But it's pretty damning. Like, the research is really damning of shift work, which is why I started this with, like, if you have the option, I don't know if it's worth the $2 pay differential, you know? Maybe in a certain situation it would be, but I didn't even realize. And I used to work not third shift, not overnight, but for all of my young adult life until I was, I think, like 26 or so, I worked from like 5 p.m. to like 1 or 2 sometimes in the morning as a bartender. So definitely not like the normal circadian rhythm. And yeah, I mean, I started working those hours when I was like 14 years old. And to this day, I think it has affected like just my sleep rhythms without that kind of a schedule. It's gotten better, but I cannot help but look back now, especially knowing what I know about the research now and being like, ugh, what did I do? How long am I going to pay for all that? You know?
So forget about environmental things. What about the hypothesis that some people are just predisposed to being up in the middle of the night and being down during the day? Like, some people are just night owls.
I mean, I think that's true. I don't know. I actually don't know what the research says, but I feel like a night owl. But looking back, I cannot tell if that's like a nature versus nurture thing. I have no idea. I just know that now I am a night owl, but not an up all night owl. I'm like asleep from midnight till 8 owl now, whatever that is.
That sounds relatively normal to me. I don't think that's...
Well, it used to be, like I said, it's gotten so much better, right?
Well, you used to sometimes be awake at 2, 3 in the morning. Not that you'd be awake all night. Well, sometimes on rare occasion you'd be awake all night, but ordinarily like you'd have, I don't know, maybe 1 to 2 nights a week on average where you'd be up from like say 1:30 to 4.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
just insomnia. Hi, my old friend. But, I wasn't expected to perform. I wasn't expected to save human lives while I was in that state. And, a lot of people who are working overnight they have responsibilities that they have to perform overnight. And, that lack of sleep, I would suspect, would lead to a decreased productivity and maybe a higher risk of injury.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that because again, like your body wants to go catatonic. It wants to shut down, but you're forcing your body to mobilize. So think of like what your consciousness must feel like when your body wants you to sleep, but you're awake. It's zombie-like even, and again, you can get more skilled at working through the night, but the truth is it's just not normal. It's not natural, and it's going to be a learned skill. And there's a margin of error there. And sometimes that margin of error can lead to some severe consequences, right?
Well, I do want to just clarify, just because something isn't natural doesn't mean that I necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's just that, doing research for various clients and for this episode, it does not look good. There's a lot of myths that go around that when you actually dive into the research, you're like, oh, well, I guess that's not so scary. Like, as it turns out, it's not a big difference at all. Looking at this research, no, it's a big difference. It's a big difference, actually, in long-term health outcomes.
So it's one of those things where you have to manage it and you have to take care of yourself because you can be healthy in spite of it. It's not one of those things that, even though there's lots of rewards to these kinds of jobs, you have to work that much harder to take care of yourself. So
also, shift work is not necessarily just heroic jobs. You could be a gas station attendant or work in a warehouse all night or, et cetera, et cetera. Not that those are not important jobs, but, you're saying there's this huge payoff. I'm saying, really evaluate if there's a huge payoff before you take an overnight job if you care about your long-term health.
Right, because that shift differential it's a little bit extra, but it ain't all that much extra. I mean, there's other things to consider. Some people, maybe they have to work 2 jobs, and that's the job they have available. So,
and that's probably an entire secondary layer of stressors to your body. And listen, I get it. If push came to shove, there's nothing that I wouldn't do for my family. My health, can take a back burner if I need to put food in the mouth of my family. But if I have the option, I would avoid that whenever possible. It's the same reason that I avoid red-eye flights whenever I can, because I can feel it the next day how terrible it is for me. And when I was younger and, just was trying to find the cheapest possible flights to anywhere, red-eyes were fine. But as I get older, no, they are not.
I hear the words red-eye and I just cringe these days. Whereas back in the day, it was kind of like, ooh, it's a red eye. No, I couldn't agree with you further there. I think it's worth mentioning that it could take its toll on your mental health too, right? Your mood is affected when you're not able to regulate your hormones or just recover or just shut down your brain and let it process the day in a healthy way.
Yeah, well, another thing about shift work is they tend to have lower levels of vitamin D, which stands for duh in this case. If you're sleeping all day and working all night, you're not seeing the sun as much as other people. So it stands to reason you'd have lower levels of vitamin D, which can absolutely affect all kinds of things from your mood to your energy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and your melatonin levels are thrown off as well. You're being exposed to light in the middle of the night, and then you're going to sleep when you should actually be exposed to light. So in other words, your sleeping patterns are haywire. You're not in an environment over the course of a 24-hour period where your body can do what it needs to do naturally to have healthy sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
What is probably very interesting for our audience over here is also thinking about how being awake in the middle of the night and working through the night can affect your metabolism. And it could affect your digestion.
Yeah, I mean, you touched upon it briefly with the leptin, which is the fat-burning hormone, not being where it ought to be when you work overnight. But there's other things as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you're stressed out, your digestion becomes affected. Now just imagine having irregular bowel movements and what that can do to the lining of your digestive tract. It can spasm or just not, mobilize properly, and then over time that can lead to things like ulcers and stuff. I mean,
I think a lot of people who work overnight often kind of eat weird. You know what I mean? Like eat at weird times for sure. Obviously, that's part of the program, but also sometimes just like eat weird food. Hard to find a good, healthy, home-cooked meal at 3 a.m., Sometimes it's, whatever drive-through is open at that time of day to get food. And so I'm sure that's not helping your digestion either. But, your metabolism, which is an incredibly all-encompassing word for pretty much just a ton of processes that happen in your body. But we always think about it as like the rate at which you digest food and burn energy, right? But it is almost entirely dictated by your hormones. And when your sleep is screwed up, your hormones are screwed up. So your metabolism is screwed up. Now, if this happens for a night here and there, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of repercussion. When this happens, 5 nights a week for 10 years, there's a lot of repercussions. And yeah, this would be probably the most interesting topic for the listeners of this particular podcast. And believe it or not, this was the reason that I started looking into this in the first place, was because people wanted to know how overnight shifts would affect their fat loss or their muscle gain, right? That's what, how do I do this when I work overnights? How do I hit my macros when I work overnights? And we'll get there, don't worry. But when I started looking at it, I was like, holy shit, this is so much bigger than just fat loss and muscle gain, and kind of really points back to an episode we did years ago about sleep and how critical high quality sleep is for your overall health, and how overnight shifts just really are not great for it. But I don't want to make it sound like it's just all doom and gloom, but it's a little bit doomy and gloomy, because all of these tactics that I'm about to talk about, they will help you get used to working overnights. Like they'll help your body and your mind get used to working overnights. They will definitely, you can reach fitness goals while working overnights. However, even with these strategies employed, there is no research to support that it will still improve the outcome of your overall health long term. That doesn't mean it won't. It means there's no research that suggests that yet, which is a little tiny bit chilling to me. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, hopefully with enough tips and know-how, more people can be armed with ways to take care of themselves, and the research, which is ultimately on the pool of people who tend to probably make poorer choices or not take care of themselves and balance themselves out. Hopefully we will have a healthier body of people, or at least our audience, you'll have the chance to have the know-how and be armed with the right information to take care of yourself if you're a night shift worker. That's the goal.
And here's the thing, right? Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to work these shifts. What do you do? What do you do if that someone is you? How do you set yourself up for the most success possible in this less than ideal situation? Now that we can all hopefully agree, this is a less than ideal situation. Don't try to fool yourself otherwise. But how can we make it as close to the ideal situation as possible? The first thing is you have to double down, triple down, quadruple down on your sleep hygiene. You have to. It's not negotiable. So what I mean by this is trying to go to bed at the same time every day. What time that is going to depend on your shift. I mean, obviously the closer you can get it to night, the better. So like if your shift ends at 4 a.m, go to bed at 4 a.m, like right when you get home, right then. Don't wait till like noon to go to sleep. Just get it as close to regular day and night cycles as possible, but go at the same time every day, whenever possible. And I know it's not always possible because maybe you have a doctor's appointment in the middle of the day on your day off, or you have to get to the post office and they're only open between these hours, But when you can, go to bed at the same time every night. Use a white noise machine. Put earplugs in your ears. Make your room pitch black and a tiny bit chilly, get your screens out of the room, and really, really do not give on this. Not even a little bit, because this might be the most important thing that you could possibly do.
Makes sense to me. You control your environment and you do it in a disciplined way. And if you don't, well, you're at the mercy of an environment that's working against you. And this is, I think, where your routine, your discipline as someone who's interested in fitness and health can play a role in how and what your behavior is when it comes to sleep hygiene.
I think you can employ the help of your family and your friend, if you live with roommates or something. Make sure that they understand that between this hour and this hour, you need it to be quiet, because that's when you sleep, and it's very important that you sleep. Now, if you have small kids, you're going to do the best you can. That's why I mentioned the white noise and the earplugs. It's impossible for other people to be silent. But if they could try to be quiet, that would be helpful. If there's errands that other people can run for you during the daytime hours, that would be super helpful as well. And I know that, this really does require a good support system, but success in most things does require a good support system. So this is no different. But yeah, let them know what they could do to help you be the happiest, healthiest person that you could be. And this stands to benefit them too, because if you're not getting good quality sleep, that limited amount of time that you do see them, you are likely to be kind of miserable.
Yeah, and that's not good for anyone. These days, fortunately, there are a lot of services to support you as well, not just leaning on family and friends. So setting up your groceries to be delivered, for example, at a certain time can be helpful. Things that you would ordinarily do for yourself, you can have a shopper do for you or someone else do something for you. And hopefully, the kind of appointments that happen during the day, you can find a way to push them into the late afternoon or early evening. And sometimes, like Danny said, you won't have a choice. But whenever you do have a choice, making it so that as soon as you get home, while it's still as dark as possible and you've still got some of the night left to salvage, to have that be the time where as much of the environment that can be naturally conducive towards sleep as possible, you want to hold on to that. And whatever can't be, like Danny said, control the environment in a way that is conducive to good sleep.
Yeah. I would also say, if at all possible, try to get some sunlight during the day, if it's possible. I know that if I was working overnights in New England in the winter and I had to sleep during the day, I feel like there's like 2 hours of daylight in New England in the winter, so it wouldn't be possible. But maybe where you live, it is possible to get some sunlight every day. For vitamin D, it's not going to be enough, so definitely also supplement with vitamin D, which I think honestly most people should probably do anyway. But get outside as much as you can. If you can't get outside, get a light box, like a sunlight box. No, it's not going to give you vitamin D, but it is going to send that light to your brain. It's going to release, the right chemicals at the right time. A lot of our sleep hormones and wake hormones are dictated not necessarily by the time of day, but of light and dark. So if you wake up before your shift and it's still light, get some sunlight. If it's not, get that light box in your eyes if you can, so that you wake up. And then when you go to bed, that's why you want it pitch dark, because when it's pitch dark, no screens, that's when your body will start to release melatonin, which will help you fall asleep. As far as supplementing with melatonin, I don't really mess with that, honestly, because I feel like it's a slippery slope where if you take it too much, you can kind of become dependent on it, too, maybe not produce your own naturally as well anymore. Plus, I find that the over-the-counter melatonins are way, way, way stronger than what somebody would even want to supplement with. Like, I've seen them as much as 20 milligrams. You need like 1. So yeah, it's just not something that I recommend, but hey, your mileage may vary. Try it out if you want to.
Maybe like a temporary thing while you're trying to get through something and work your way into good habits, because your body will learn to produce melatonin on its own eventually once you stop. But again, if there's that dependency there, what are you really doing for yourself when you could otherwise find a way to give yourself better sleep without taking something. So it serves a purpose. It'll get you through something, but maybe not. Maybe have don't interfere with your body's natural ability to produce melatonin for a long period of time.
Yeah. On the flip side of that coin, I would also say avoid caffeine and avoid alcohol. So avoid caffeine for at least 6 hours before you're planning on going to bed. If you're planning on going to bed at 5 a.m, do not even think about touching caffeine after 11 p.m. at night. That would be my recommendation. Caffeine kind of hangs out in your system for a while. And yes, I am not an anti-caffeine person. I have a cup of coffee in the morning, but I think it can be a really slippery slope for people, especially when you're already fighting your circadian rhythm, to really lean into caffeine as a crutch. Right, 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I would recommend avoiding that. Otherwise, you'll exacerbate sleep problems that you have. And ditto with alcohol. I know that alcohol can help you fall asleep faster, but it really decreases the quality of your sleep. It's almost like, you don't go into the deeper sleep cycles that you need to when you have alcohol in your system. So you wake up maybe getting a good amount of sleep, but you are less rested. So I would recommend avoiding that as well.
What about marijuana, weed?
I have not done any research on this, so I won't speak to it.
Yeah, I haven't done research on it either. From what I can surmise, though, it's a little bit can be helpful, if it's a microdose, perhaps, but a lot of it, just like alcohol, it's stimulating. And so it could actually, in theory, you think you're sleeping, but in reality, are you getting quality sleep is the question.
I don't know. I'm sure that there's a ton of studies being done on it right now as it becomes more available for all of these different uses. And power to people that find it really helpful. I have lots of clients that don't do shift work, but that do find some sort of CBD, THC, tiny thing helps them get better sleep. It's your body. You do what you want with it. I don't care. It's just, personally, I do not partake. It does nothing for me. But, I think that there's a lot of budding research on all of these topics. So I'll keep my eyes open because, if something works and helps people, I'm all for it. If it doesn't hurt people, I'm all for it.
And if you're listening to this and you have access to information that we haven't gotten our hands on yet and you want to keep the conversation going, by all means, let us know what you know that we don't know.
Yeah, and jump into our Muscles by Brussels Facebook group because that's where we can keep these discussions going.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our VeganProteins members-only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and are absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at VeganProteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services. And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
Okay, so hang on. What was the next thing I was going to say?
Food?
I haven't gotten to food yet. Before I get to food, because I think that's what people want to know probably the most about, is I would say make sure to exercise every day. This doesn't have to be marathon sessions at the gym or anything, but move your body every single day. Preferably shortly after you wake up is probably going to be the best thing for your new circadian rhythm that we're trying to get established here. Wake up, get some light, exercise, go to work. Don't drink caffeine, don't drink alcohol late. And when you come home, you go to bed in the dark like religion, okay? These are your first steps here. And then before we actually get into food, I also would say try to find time to spend with your friends and family. Like carve that out. Because I know that when I worked until 2 a.m. for years, the only people that I spent time with were the people that I worked with. Because if anybody's ever worked in the service industry, there were no holidays for me. There were no weekends for me. You work all of those. So it's pretty much like right now, lol. You work all of those things. But also, you know, when everybody else is out relaxing and having fun, you're not, because you're waiting on them. You're serving them. So yeah, it's hard to find time to spend with people that live on more like conventional schedules. So make sure that you carve that time out because it can disappear before you even realize it. Okay, so let's talk about food. The first thing that I would recommend that people do is still think about your food, your nutrition targets, your macros, calories, carbs, fat, protein, etc., in a 24-hour window. You know, 24 hours is still 24 hours. So that is one way to track your food if that is something that you're doing. I'd also encourage you to let go of the idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because I feel like, you know, they're very much so as time of day sort of tied to those words. So if you think about it as meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, you know, and a couple of snacks in there as well, I think that that is a much more productive way to think about logging your food or think about eating your food, just the schedule of it.
I can totally see how things could become disordered by like, oh, I just want to get home so I could eat and enjoy my meal, or, oh, I'm going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but then eat here, and then how does it all work out? So yeah, I feel you there. I think that's really smart to think about the amount of meals and maybe have some consistency with, okay, I'm going to have a snack and a main meal while I'm on shift work, and then I'm going to have maybe 2 more main meals and a smaller snack when I'm not working, something like that.
Like meal 1 at home before you go to work, snack at work, meal 2 at work, another snack before you head home, and then your 3rd meal at home before you go to bed.
Yeah, something like that. Whatever works for you, really.
But I would try to keep it consistent. Much like the sleep schedule, you want this food schedule to be as consistent as possible because your body will start to kind of expect the food at those times, and it's going to help you with your energy and your blood sugar and all of that jazz.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to the middle of the night kind of stuff where you're already fighting your body's natural responses, it can be easy to just start like picking at things or just finding like late night snacks, and you have access to stuff like that. Quick convenience on the go stuff is all over the place in the middle of the night, and it can be so easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah, so a lot like how we have to double down on our sleep hygiene, I actually think that it is probably more important for shift workers to specifically eat very healthy, like eat more healthy whole foods than maybe you could kind of get away with eating if you worked during the day. Like really, really prioritize whole grains, beans, vegetables, fruits, lean plant-based sources of protein, healthy fats, like really double down on those things. And I would recommend backing off of the super palatable, highly processed foods when you can. Not because I think all processed foods are the devil. You guys know that we don't think that here, but especially in the middle of the night when you're alone and you're bored, you are way more likely to find yourself at the bottom of a bag of chips than you would be, I think, during the day in a really social setting, right?
Probably.
Like most people who struggle with snacking is when? At night.
Mm-hmm.
Like even people who work during the day struggle with snacking at night. If all of the time that you're eating is at night, I just think it's better to stay away from those foods that are really hard to stop eating.
Yeah, it's just a triggering time, middle of the night, and the type of work that you're doing, like keeping yourself alert like that, you could almost wind up relying on food to keep you awake.
Yeah. And one of the things they found about people who work overnight is that they are more prone to diabetes. I don't think we mentioned that before, and it's due to, really wacky blood sugar levels. Now, is that from the time of day? Is that from the actual food they were eating? My guess is it's probably a little of both. So, again, really prioritizing a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet predominantly, it doesn't have to be 100%, but predominantly, I think is going to help you stay more even-keeled when it comes to your blood sugar.
So think about things that are portable and inconvenient that are high in protein, like a protein bar and like something snacky, like maybe a bag of pretzels and some hummus, but also make yourself a nice meal too. Make yourself a salad or just like something wholesome. It doesn't just have to be snacky and on the go because you're working in the middle of the night and you're on call or whatever. Like you can make yourself a nice meal too. And
but I would say, even though I said just steer away from highly processed foods, I would recommend leaning on convenience foods. And when I say convenience foods, what I mean is bags of pre-cooked brown rice, pre-chopped vegetables, pre-baked tofu, things like that, bags of nuts and seeds, little trail mix bags, things that you don't have to like quote unquote meal prep by, standing over pots and pans for hours and hours. They're quick and easy to just put in a Tupperware container, and then you can just nuke it at work if you have to, but it's still got lots of nutrients and fiber and protein and vegetables, and it's going to be filling and satisfying. And that's what I mean by leaning into convenience foods, because your schedule's pretty wacky already. It might not be realistic for you to think you're going to dedicate 6 hours a week towards meal prep.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like actual specifics instead of just rattling off too fast. You got the ready-made rice, like Uncle Ben's ready-made rice or any brand of that's already pre-cooked. You don't even need to microwave it. You got those 100-calorie snack packs of mixed nuts that are really convenient. You got to-go like 3-ounce cups of hummus, and they usually come with a little something that you can put into it, or you could buy it as a standalone, and you can get a small bag of baby carrots, for example. I'm drawing a blank on vegetables because, what if you don't have access to a microwave and you still want to eat vegetables? I
think everybody would have access to a microwave.
Yeah?
I think almost everybody would have access to a microwave.
Like a steam fresh bag of vegetables then?
But if you didn't, you could find cans of soup. I guess you would need to heat that up in a microwave too, wouldn't you? You could make sandwiches on whole grain breads with like some tofurkey deli slices and, stuff that thing full of veggies and hummus or mustard or something, and you can just eat it cold.
You think in cans? You think cans would be helpful?
I think cans of beans. Actually, they've been making... So cans of beans are great, right? They've also been making like bags of beans. Yeah. Bags of rice and beans.
Or like refried beans.
That you could literally just open and eat with a spoon. Like, it's pretty... There's some stuff out there, guys. But, don't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid to lean into convenience foods because they see a pre-cooked bag of rice and they're like, oh, well, I could cook rice and it would be way cheaper than that. Yeah, you could make it yourself, and yes, it would be cheaper, but are you going to, is the question. And if you are not like 9 out of 10 sure that you're actually going to do it yourself, just get the convenience food. Because if it comes down to that extra $1 you're going to spend on a bag of rice versus you driving through the Burger King drive-thru at 2 a.m. because you didn't have a meal prepared, which one do you think is going to be better for you?
Obviously the whole foods. Oh, and just to be more clear on that, the tofu stuff, the baked tofu cubes. They're so...
That's what I said.
I know, they're so good.
They're so good.
So good.
And then I don't want to dive too far into this because I'm not 100% sure in it, but I think this might be the only instance where I think there might be a case to be made for intermittent fasting because of what eating in the middle of the night does to your blood sugar levels. I think there could be a case for eating a big meal before you go into work and a big meal when you get home and not really eating during your shift. Don't quote me on that, but I think it might be worth looking into, and this might be the only instance where I think there could be a potential benefit to intermittent fasting.
The only issue I see there is in between those big meals while you're home, I feel like you'll probably want to eat something else. And obviously you don't want to eat something while you're at work. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that your snacks are satisfying in between. Or I could easily see some, like myself personally, feeling like I'm going without if I'm eating right before work and right after work. And there isn't really much like time around when I'm eating.
Well, I think you would have to get adapted to it, which most people have to get adapted to it when they do it anyway. I don't know. Usually I'm like kind of meh on intermittent fasting. Like, you know, again, 24 hours is 24 hours. It's not that big of a difference. But based on what I saw with blood sugar, maybe there's something there. So I'll dig more into it. And if I find anything, I'll post it in the Muscles by Brussels Facebook group. And yeah, back to that 24 hours thing, regardless of whether your goal is to lose fat, you're going to have to be in a caloric deficit in a 24-hour period. If your goal is to build muscle, you're going to have to be in a caloric surplus in a 24-hour period, et cetera, et cetera. So determine when your day starts and ends. What is your 24-hour period? And be tracking your food in that time. And outside of that, the most important thing, possibly even more important than the nutrition, is the sleep. If you can't get your sleep as good as possible, you're not going to make the kind of progress that you could otherwise make. So you need to really, really double down on that sleep. Okay, moving on to our question and answer segment. Here's one for you, Giacomo. I need approximately 140 grams of protein to meet my daily requirement. How can I do that if I want to avoid soy?
Well, my instinct, my immediate response is to say lean on seitan, vital wheat gluten, because that's the other heavy hitter when it comes to getting in a lot of protein without getting in a lot of calories. I would start to look into different ways that you can work with vital wheat gluten to make lots of fun things. And you can also work with textured protein, because although textured protein historically has been made from soy, they make textured protein out of stuff like peas and sunflower these days. The pea one is a little more popular. So like texturized protein made from pea, Longev is a popular brand, and vital wheat gluten, and then making your own seitan or baking it into things like pancakes and waffles or bread, for example, can really up the protein count. And then the other thing is you don't necessarily even have to look at high protein foods. You can also look at like where you're getting your protein in throughout the day in general. Like where can you sneak it in, right? Are you adding nutritional yeast to your vegetables for B vitamins and to, snag 10, 15 grams of protein out of your nutritional yeast and it's delicious. Are you eating your vegetables? Because if you're not, you're missing out on probably anywhere from like 10 to 20 grams of protein and everything else that comes along with eating dark green leafy vegetables. They're nutritious, voluminous, fibrous. They keep you hydrated. They keep you energized. Good for your digestive system, satiating. And you're going to get like 10 to 20 grams of protein that way. So you can get like probably upwards of 50 grams of protein without even having to focus on protein sources. That all said, there are some things that are like not really protein sources, but pack a decent punch, like beans, for example. So experiment, right? Because there's only so many beans that you can tolerate. Like if I were to sit here and tell you, hey, have a cup of beans with lunch and have a cup of beans with dinner, you might be upset with me the next day when your digestion was a little off because of a lot of fiber. But if you were to get like, say, a half a cup to a cup of beans in and, mix that in with your salad, and just have it as part of your dinner, you can get an extra 20, 30 grams of protein that way. So if you're doing math over there, like 75 grams of protein, upwards of that much without even focusing on protein sources, and then protein sources like pea and like wheat, which is the seitan.
Did you mention protein powder?
No.
Because I'm not a big protein powder user, but that's the biggest duh of them all. Yeah. Not duh to this question asker, but just like duh, it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I focused on things that are more like just something you wouldn't put in a smoothie and necessarily have to bake with, just something that's on your plate. But yeah, no, protein powder is major. I'm all about protein powder for sure. All right, we got a question here for you, Danny. Hey, Danny, I've wondered this for a while. If you have a target set of macros that you aim for daily, how much does it matter if you don't reach those macros? Like say you fall short of your target protein by, 20 grams a day. Is that close enough to reach your goal physique or not? Will you ever reach your goal physique this way, or will it just take a lot longer?
That's a great question. And it's very hard to answer without knowing what somebody's goal is. If someone is starting at 300 pounds and their goal is to get to 200 pounds, yeah, you're probably going to be able to do that eating in this way. If a woman, for example, is at 25% body fat and their goal is to get to like 17% body fat, probably not going to get there eating this way. So the more extreme your goal is, the more meticulous you need to be with reaching that goal. Plus, I'm not sure if this person was like eating over their macros or under their macros. But, you know, if someone's chronically under eating, they might end up shooting themselves in the foot if their goal is to build muscle, right? You can't build muscle if you don't have enough food. If someone's consistently overeating and their goal is weight loss, they're going to lose it much slower because they're going to be in a smaller deficit. Plus, sometimes when we just rely on our own internal cues, when we're trying to change our body, whether that's to get smaller or bigger or leaner or more muscular or what have you, when we're trying to change from what we are right now, a lot of times our body doesn't want that. It craves homeostasis. It's going to do what it can to keep you right where you are. So when you're just relying on your internal hunger and fullness cues, a lot of times they're going to push you in the direction that keeps you right where you are. So you can get better and better at this over time. And I think we all should aim to, because I think like largely eating based on your hunger and fullness cues is one of the ultimate goals. But when you're trying to initially reach a goal, I think the closer you can get to those macros, the more consistently you're going to make progress towards that goal, the more you're going to know what's working and what's not. So this isn't to say you can't reach your goal kind of eating off. I think anybody who's doing like more than 85% adherence to their program is going to make progress, you know, as long as it's a sound program, of course. But so you don't have to be perfect to reach your goals, but you do have to be pretty damn good most of the time.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. Feel free to stay in touch with us on socials at Vegan Proteins, at Muscles by Brussels on Instagram, Facebook, even Twitter. Search Muscles by Brussels Radio on Facebook and join our group and weigh in on the conversation that you just heard us having today. Hit the contact button on veganproteins.com or email us, coach@veganproteins.com anytime, and I promise you, you will get a response from us. Once again, my name's 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐿,
And I'm Danny.
and we'll talk to you soon.